and welcome back to my podcast, The Master of General Studies.
Your podcast, he's taking over the show. That's okay.
Okay, not my podcast. It's his podcast, so I'll let him do the introduction.
No, that's all right. Rebecca, I appreciate everything you've done to help me with this, and Larkex Company here with their studio is awesome. But yes, this is the Master of General Knowledge podcast, and I'm typically your host, but Rebecca does such a good job. She's kind of preempted me to the guest role, which I don't mind. I get to talk more.
I like it. It's fun. I'm happy I get to host it, and it's enjoyable, and I'm learning so much about RVs and all of the industry, so it's really fun.
Well, that's great. I think the last podcast we talked about was the general types and classes A, B, and C of motorhomes and motor coaches.
Yes, last time we were in the studio, we kind of covered the A is like the bus ones, the C is more of the traditional styled ones we see, and then the B is more of the Sprinter van, right?
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm remembering. Okay, so then this time, which we said we would go into last time we were in the studio, we're going to talk more about the maintenance of RVs and all of that general stuff, kind of focus more on what your company does, Composite Products, and how that works, right?
Sure.
Okay. What? I'm hosting. Why am I asking you?
That's okay. No, that's good. Do you want me to jump in, or do you want to lead us in this conversation?
Okay, hold on. Let me lead. I'm the host, okay? So let's talk about your area of expertise, right? Composite Products. Do you want to go into a little detail of Composite Products, how you started it?
Well, I'll tell you about my background to kind of set the stage of where I'm coming from in the RV thing.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, I think we mentioned that I've owned 3 RVs in the past, and I've done long trips with families and so forth, mostly Class Cs and camper vans. So I have a background knowledge from a consumer, a user of them. I also have a pretty deep background in mechanical assemblies, car restoration, modifying, building, fabrication shop, and so forth. So that's,
you do car restoration, right? You do
Yes.
Mustang restoration on the side.
Yeah, classic Mustangs has been one of the things I do for a lot of years, and I built some camper vans too. So
Okay.
I got a big tool selection, and I like doing that. So I've also been involved in automotive manufacturing and industrial manufacturing in general. So I sort of know the assembly process. I understand how a motorhome starts as a chassis and a drivetrain, let's say supplied by Mercedes or Sprinter van, and how it comes out the other end of an RV factory, fully outfitted and set up with TVs and couches and refrigerators and all that.
Okay, amazing. Okay, so that's your general knowledge with it. And then, so you've owned RVs. And so was it the owning of an RV where you were like, oh my gosh, I need to figure out the maintenance that got you started with Composite Products?
Yes, and specifically Composite Products works and manufactures sealants and repair systems for typically the Class C motorhome, the fiberglass sided one. The motorhome in general, especially the Class C, which is like the box van, looks like a U-Haul with windows and doors and swoopy decals and stuff in the overhead bunk.
Okay.
Those have a fiberglass composite wall system. It's basically a thin layer of fiberglass glued to plywood, and then that layer is attached to some framing of either aluminum or wood with styrofoam inside it, and then they bond, inner paneling, and it comes out as a 40-foot long by 8.5 feet high, fabricated composite wall.
Okay, so that's the body.
That's the body of a Class C.
Okay.
The Class B typically come with the van body that we made from the factory, cargo van.
Okay.
And the Class A's can also be manufactured in the same way as a Class C, but there's some variations.
Okay, got it. And so your product specifically focuses on Class C?
Yeah, the fiberglass sided ones, which are mostly Class C, typically.
Mostly Class C.
Yes.
Okay, amazing. So then we talked a little about what your product does, so let's kind of talk about the maintenance of maintaining an RV and those qualities, right? So we talked about the chassis and the drivetrain. I'm remembering the words. We wanted over it last time, but is that where it kind of starts? Where does it begin?
That's great. I'm glad you remembered that, because those are key topics. Those are key components of the RV. And the drivetrain and the chassis, as we discussed, are generally manufactured by an automotive-style company, Ford, General Motors, Mercedes. They build the frame, the wheels, suspension, the engine, and all that.
Okay.
So the maintenance of those items, you simply follow the owner's manual like you would in your car.
Got it.
Change the oil every 5,000 miles, or whatever is called for. Transmission fluid, differential fluid. Those type of maintenance things are typically following the manufacturer's recommendation who builds the powertrain or the chassis. Outside of that, but in that same vein, there's wear items.
Okay, and then what are wear items?
Same as your car.
Okay, same as the car. Got it.
Brakes, tires,
Brakes, tires.
shocks,
Okay.
lubrication. Like if you drive in the winter in the rain, you're going to want to have the chassis lubricated quite often. Tires are a big thing with motorhomes and RVs. Is people, they don't put a lot of miles on these typically. And so the tires age out, become crack, and they dry, and you have to really watch and cover them up, keep the UV light off them.
Okay. So on average, how often would you replace tires in an RV?
Typically, even on a car, they say the tires, age is 5 years
Okay.
before the rubber becomes compromised. How that tire lives its life has a lot to do with it. Overloading tires is a big thing with RVs. People load them up, and but 5 years in time, you want to definitely think about replacing the tires for sure.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so then what's next? What's next with maintenance? So we talked about the chassis and the drivetrain, and then the exterior parts.
Yes, I'll talk a little about brakes too, because that's on a tire thing.
Oh, okay.
So these are big, heavy vehicles, right? And you can load them with 10 people, 5 people, whatever, and bicycles and all kinds of gear, and you can overload the brakes pretty quickly. If you've ever, burned your brakes, the panic stop, and you get that vibration after that. Same with RVs. So, maintaining your brakes, really keeping an eye on them is a critical thing, because you're going down the hill in a 12,000-pound vehicle.
You want to be able to stop.
Yes, Powder Mountain Road is up here in northern Utah, is treacherous and very easy to cook your brakes. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
So brakes and tires, critical. Beyond that, it's the coach. That's where I come across the most maintenance issues.
Okay.
And pretty much day one, you've got to caulk and seal the RV, even though it's been factory done.
Really? You have to just redo it?
You got to look at it really closely.
Okay. And why is that? Is it just because it's been done in a factory, so it's not the best quality?
Yeah, so if you look at the way an automotive car is manufactured, the way they're putting the sealants and they're bonding the glass in is, really pretty special and pretty detailed and quality control. When you get into some of these RV factories, that's really, I hate to put it this way, but it's sort of like, building garden sheds on wheels. It's labor intensive, and there's a lot of variation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you take this, they're not boats, okay? You put a boat in the water, it's fiberglass, it floats, it's watertight, and you flip an RV upside down, it's gonna sink. So they assemble these walls, these panelized walls and roof, they screw them together, they put a bunch of caulk and sealants in there, and then you take the thing down the road and, rattle the snots out of it, and you really, I don't know if that's the right term, but you shake it and rock and roll it, and you get gaps and seams fail and things.
That makes sense. So are RVs kind of like cars, where it's like as soon as you drive it off the lot, it loses value?
Depreciation, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
We talked about, boats being, a place to sink your money in, and RVs the same thing.
Okay.
So 25%, 20% right off the day.
Right, as soon as it's off the lot. Okay, so and then like if you're buying like a used RV, you definitely want to make sure you're watching the seals and the laminates on that.
Yeah, so that's a whole other podcast about how to buy a used car or a used vehicle, what to look for. But very much so, same process.
Yeah.
I always, my thing is, one owner with a documented history, best way to really gauge what a vehicle's been through.
Yep.
But some of these videos we've done for Composite Products, I've been in RV dealerships and filmed some of the problems in the caulks and the sealants and the way the windows and doors are fitted right off the showroom floor, like 1/4-inch gaps that are going to leak immediately.
Oh, that's crazy.
It is. Why the quality control? It's gotten much better. And certainly certain manufacturers and certain factories do a much better job than others. But we're still seeing, 3 and 4-year-old coaches getting calls with the water infiltration through a seam or a window that's not put in correctly. And what happens is in that composite wall, I talked about the plywood being behind the fiberglass.
Yeah.
So there's, if we're talking general house construction, there's interior grade plywood and exterior grade plywood. Exterior grade plywood would go on your roof or your outside wall under the siding, and the way that it's glued together at the plywood factory is with this moisture resistant glue. It can see water for extended period of time.
Okay.
Interior grade plywood is what cabinets are made of. It's not ever supposed to see any water.
Got it. That makes sense.
The plywood they use in the RVs is interior grade.
Oh, that's interesting.
Why they haven't fixed this? They buy hundreds and hundreds of thousands of sheets of this, Luan plywood, and the stuff basically separates and comes apart the minute it sees water.
That's so interesting because it's not like an RV doesn't see water. There's rain. Most places you're going to have an RV and are going to have weather.
Yeah, so, the northwest of the United States, the northeast where they're near the, coast, they sit outside. Yeah.
Even Florida, the humidity is just going to be moist.
Yes, and so it kills. So these things leak, and so we have a product that glues that plywood back together. It's not a, it doesn't fix everything. It's not a magic solution.
Yeah.
But in certain cases, it's proven to be the most cost-effective way to fix some of these problems.
Okay, and is this something that other people have, or is this an idea you came up with?
Idea I came up with in 2012 with my own motorhomes, and I have a background in epoxies and resins.
Okay.
As another piece of my life. So I made this injectable epoxy that can be pumped into the walls of the RV, and basically, if it's in relatively good shape and the delamination's not terrible, you can glue the plywood back together.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So that's a major part of RV maintenance.
Yes, it is. It's not really maintenance. That the product I have is to repair the RV after the maintenance wasn't done.
Okay, after the incorrect maintenance.
Yes, and it's not quite incorrect. If you read the owner's manual of most of these RVs, it says you have to caulk and seal it every 6 months.
Oh, okay.
There's another part of my life and my other business, Proformance Services, that I'm a licensed insurance adjuster, and I get tons of calls from people with RV who have water problems. And this water damage happens, and they go to their insurance policy, but the insurance company doesn't cover it because they say it's a maintenance item, and they want to see that you have caulked it or sealed it like in the last 6 months or year.
Oh, that's crazy.
It sort of is. So really, the day you buy an RV, you need to caulk and seal it so that you're not calling www.dlamrepair.com to get parts to fix that delamination.
Got it. But that's where we can go if we need to do it.
Yes.
Okay, amazing. And then, so how do we keep the water out? How do we seal it to begin with?
It's caulking and sealing, which is, like caulking your house. Comes in a tube and you caulk it. That's basically what it is. But
okay.
A little more detailed. In the fact, you take these RVs and if you look at the lineal footage of window, door opening, trims along the roof and the sidewalls, hundreds and hundreds of feet that are basically sealed from water with either butyl tape, which is like a putty tape. It's I call it plumber's putty, which usually plumbers use in your sink drains and so forth.
Got it.
It's like a paste, but it comes in a roll, and they unroll this tape. It's like 1 inch wide, inch thick. Boats use it for sealing hatches and stuff. It's called butyl tape, and that's what they put under the trims and around the windows and doors of RVs, which is fine and dandy. It does work pretty well, but if you don't have enough overlap of the window frame onto the siding, like half an inch, and they typically, I find these have like a 1/4 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch or a 1/16 of an inch. The window is not centered in there, and that butyl tape is just not
it's not doing it.
Right. It's not. Yeah, they're misusing the products in a sense and not doing it correctly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we get windows leaks around the windows.
Okay, and is that the first part that normally starts leaking?
You can see it immediately. So if you see one of these RVs going down the road, just look at the windows and look under the windows, and a lot of times you'll see this like bubbling or kind of expansion of the siding, and that's because that window around the frame is leaked, water got in the wall, and now the plywood is separating.
Got it.
So sealing is critical. Now, do you have to take all your windows out the day you buy the RV and reseal it? Not necessarily, but it pays to take a close look.
Yeah.
Specifically on windows, there's a trim ring that goes on the inside of the RV. And the screws on this trim ring go from the inside of the window to the outside of the window and squeezes the window between the trim ring and the window frame itself.
Okay.
I've seen many cases where they break the screws. There's maybe like if you think of a pipe flange that has 15 screws around a circle, that's the same way the window works.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And if you break a screw or don't have 1 or 2 screws tight, you lose what's called clamp force, and so the butyl tape isn't squeezed down tight enough, and now
immediately
you
that's
go through
where
a
it
rainstorm.
starts.
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's so cool.
Yes. Yeah, and so those are the windows, doors, hatches, and then on the roof there's a bunch of seams, usually horizontal across the top where they've seamed the roofing. All these are potential leak areas.
Okay, and so you can do this yourself, but if you want someone else to do RV maintenance repair, where do you take it?
That's a great general question. Of course, let's say chassis and drivetrain. Some big RV dealerships have the ability to do the service work on chassis and buses. You need a big lift.
Yeah.
Your local garage isn't going to have a lift.
No, Jiffy Lube will not be able to do that for me.
That's correct. So you can go to the big dealerships. There's smaller independent shops, let's say aren't affiliated with a major brand.
Okay.
And they may or may not be able to handle stuff like that. But that'll handle your chassis and your engine. So it's more like a manufacturer's recommendation, whoever produces that. As far as the body and sealing and the caulking, huge variation in quality.
Got it.
We talk to people all around the country at the Composet Products. They call us and they say, well, I had it sealed last year, and I asked, what did they do? Well, I don't know. The guy spent about a half an hour, and went through 5 tubes of caulk. Well, that's not going to do it.
No, at all.
Typically you're removing old caulk. You may be removing windows. It's a pretty big deal. So you really have to talk to the people doing it and make sure they understand and you understand that this is a critically important job they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's making sure the water doesn't get in.
Correct. And again, the variability in quality and workmanship is huge. But it's not a lot different than your car. We all have a mechanic or a garage that we trust, and we all have horror stories of, times we spent a ton of money and the problem never got fixed.
Absolutely. And so, okay, so like with the delamination, when it happens, does it damage the outer body of paint at all? That's just a question I have.
That's a great question. And the answer is not necessarily.
Okay.
The thin layer of fiberglass that's typically Phylon is a brand that's used, that can deform over time because it's now not bonded to the unitized structure of the composite wall.
Yeah.
And so it can change shape and never sit flat again. But as far as the finish, no. But these things are hard to you can't fix them like a car or a boat.
Okay.
A car has an automotive finish, usually a 2-step clear coat, a color clear coat finish that can be blended, and you can repair it with traditional body methods. Boats can be fiberglass repaired. They have a gel coat, which is fairly thick, shiny surface. These thin-walled RVs are very hard to patch normally. You always see the repair.
Yeah. No, and I've always noticed that. My family has a fun game we play whenever we're driving down the highway and we see RVs. We always say in the bathtub after whatever the name of the RV is. So we're always looking, So it's like the monster in the bathtub, it's a fun game we play. So I always notice that. I'm like, oh, the paint is chipping or something like that.
You can see the repairs. So
yes.
And that's when we get the insurance side of things with questions. If the thing's been impacted and damaged, technically the only way to bring it back to factory to original is remove the whole wall because it's a unitized.
Oh, that's crazy.
Complete structure, yes.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. That's so much.
It is. And so that's a whole nother, again, topic. How to fix these things, how the insurance industry handles it, the maintenance and repair. Yeah. It's all ties together.
Oh my gosh, well, amazing. Okay, so any other major points on maintenance that we want to cover?
I think we've got it relatively covered. Finding the shop is important. I will add there is a third dimension to the repair, and that's these mobile RV people. And their capacities are somewhat limited because they're working out of a truck or a trailer, but they will come to your house and or your campground or wherever you are on the side of the road and potentially repair some things. Because we didn't talk about repairs. We're talking about maintenance, but if the refrigerator fails or the AC stops working.
I didn't even think about that.
Right, those are a whole nother thing. You're traveling and it's, in Arizona, it's 120 degrees out and the AC of the coach stops working.
I'm not staying in the coach.
Right, and people have animals and dogs, so you sometimes can't drive to an RV dealership. They're booked months behind. $100 to $150 an hour is typical.
That's insane.
So there's this whole other dimension of mobile RV people who will drive to you. And they're independent contractors, most of them, and they're, qualifications and their abilities vary, but certainly they can handle caulking and sealing as well as on-the-spot repair of, or try to fix or troubleshoot while your furnace isn't
the issue that's happening.
Yes.
Oh, that's so cool. And are these people, they're pretty easy to find normally?
They're kind of difficult because they're independent, but we have an affiliate organization with one of our companies called, and it's a website. It's www.mobilervusa.com.
Okay, and this is where you can go to find independent contractors?
Yes, we actually have a national map that you can click on a state.
Oh, that's so cool. So like if I'm traveling, I'm in Utah right now, and I'm like traveling, and I'm stopping Nevada, and something happens, I'm not specifically in Utah. Like I can go specifically to Nevada and find someone.
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
And by town. So you would go to www.mobilervusa.com is a source for finding these mobile repair guys.
Okay, amazing. I'll have to check it out when I get an RV. Eventually, when I head over to the dealership.
We'll get you signed up. You'll be good to go.
Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on your podcast again. I'm so happy I got to host it. I had so much fun. I'm excited. I feel like I'm getting to a point where I'm ready to buy an RV after we have each of these talks.
Well, we'll get to the other end of it, then maybe you'll change your decision. But, you're doing great. I appreciate you taking the time to interview me, and I get to talk about things I like to talk about. So
yeah,
thank you, Rebecca.
absolutely. We got to talk about other stuff next time. I'm excited. We'll talk about all the build outs for a camper van or.
If we cover insurance, we can cover van life.
Yeah,
done that too. So.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
Hey, everybody, I appreciate you stopping by to Master of General Knowledge podcast, and visit us at www.masterofgeneralknowledge.com. And we want to hear your comments and suggestions for more shows. Thanks.
Yeah, amazing.